As you know, Universal Audio released Spark today, and you've got questions. So let's get to it. All right. Okay, so if you've watched my latest video about this, about a week ago, I put out this video and I said this. I think they're going to take all of their plugins to a cloud-based subscription model. Okay, that's going to be the first thing they do, cloud-based subscription model. And the next thing I'm going to say is they are finally going to offer their plugins native. That's right. I got lucky. I'm heading to Vegas, baby. With the odds of getting it right with Universal Audio's release of their subscription plan and going native at the same time, I should go to Vegas and throw it all down on whatever color, red, black, I don't know. Just pick a number and I'll win a bazillion, gazillion dollars. That aside, doesn't matter whether I was right about it or not. This time I happened to be right, but I was ready to make a video eating some crow if I had to, because that's the kind of show this is. All right, so let's get to the nuts and bolts of some of the things that folks are talking about today. And I want to get to this first thing right away. The Universal Audio UAD plugin users and owners of both their interfaces as well as their satellite and DSP-based PCIe card, ability to be able to run their plugins as well as owners of their plugins. For some reason, there's a lot of them that seem to be disgruntled about this release. I'll be honest with you, I'm having a real hard time wrapping my head around that because, you know, you're still going to be able to use all of those plugins. And let's face it, you loved that hardware, aka that Apollo. You loved it. Now, if you're questioning your decision to buy a satellite unit or something else like that, I'll be honest with you, I can get that to a degree, but let's be honest here, they didn't release all of their plugins. If they went all of their plugins and went today and went all of them native via subscription, then I might be able to relate to that mindset somewhat. But your workflow hasn't changed. You're going to continue to do that for as long as you want to. Let's face it, in this world of technology, we're all going to fall victim to this at some point. We're going to buy an interface. The very next week, it gets discontinued, okay? We're going to go out and buy some plugins or a DAW, and all of a sudden, bam, 2 days later, they're on sale for half price, and we missed out. Or maybe it's just beyond our return window for that, and we paid too much. It's just the nature of things. Whether or not you bought an Intel Mac right before they released Apple Silicon. Come on, that's just the nature of this. And we can't have our cake and eat it too. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You're being unrealistic if you feel that way. Because as technology advances, we all benefit. Okay, yes, it may feel like a step back in the moment, but the reality of it, you're being given some of these plugins. I started to say Pro Tools for a second. Some of these plugins, okay, where you can now run them native on your CPU and run them as much as you want. You don't have to worry about that DSP. But let's get to some of the specifics, okay, of this new release and hopefully answer some questions, okay? All right, first up, let's talk about the DSP aspect of this, okay? As of today, you can only run UAD plugins that you own through DSP. So if you need to track with no latency, okay, and be able to do that within your workflow, okay, you can only do that with plugins that you own. The native plugins will not run on DSP, okay? Now, if you happen to already own the plugin that's included in the Spark plan, you'll be able to use both, and that's only because you already own it, okay? So keep that in mind, that you can only run plugins that you own via DSP. Important point. Okay, so there's some questions about how many of these plugins can I run? If I sign up for the native version, the subscription version, how many of these plugins can I run? Well, that's probably I guess an obvious question if you're a heavy UAD user, but for those of us in the rest of the world out here that have been doing this for years and years and years, and if not decades, okay, you can run as many of those plugins as you want, as your CPU will handle, just like every other plugin. Now, I will be doing videos, okay, comparing the efficiency on the CPU of these new native versions of Universal Audio's plugins. I will compare them with similar plugins to see if the performance is basically the same. My initial reaction is it seems that's the case. These are not heavy CPU loaded plugins, or at least the ones, that's at least my initial perception of it. I won't know until I actually get in there and get heavy in there, but you can look forward to that video coming out pretty soon, okay? Okay, so if we're looking at the specs here at the end of the day, as far as the DAWs you can use this with, you can use it at Pro Tools 2021 via AAX. You can go into Logic Pro via audio units, Cubase 12 VST3, okay, Live 11 VST3 and audio units, and of course the Luna recording system. Now, why some of these others are not included, I'm not sure, but I will be testing them out with Studio One. It'll be interesting to see why, like Reaper and Digital Performer and some other DAWs are not included initially. I found that very interesting, but we're going to have to investigate that one a little bit further. As far as operating systems, as of right now, this is a Mac OS only, all right? If you're Windows, I think that's coming in later in the year, around November or so, but that's on their website. You can check that out. As typical, for whatever reason, Universal Audio seems to struggle a lot more supporting Windows users than it does Mac users. But if you're on Mac, your operating systems that it will work on, of course, are Monterey, Big Sur, and Catalina. All three of those it will work on. They're also M1 Apple Silicon native, all right? So we got that out of the way. Okay, so the next question up is, how long is it going to take them to start adding more and more plugins to this? Now this, I'm back to my crystal ball and I'm just guessing at this point. I think at the end of the day, I think today they basically are testing the waters. They want to see how many people are jump on. And I think a lot of people are going to jump on that bandwagon. As evidence today, it was clear to me that their servers got overwhelmed. A lot of people, including myself, were going in to do the 14-day free trial to see what's going on. Curious minds are going to do curious things, okay? But I had to refresh it 4 or 5 times before it would finally recognize and actually allow me to download the plugin. So just keep in mind, if you're trying to get in there and you're struggling with it right now, it does work. However, you just got to keep refreshing that window until you can get it to work for you, okay? Then you can get all your plugins. It is going to authorize to your iLok. You get 2, okay? There are 2 licenses that you can use with this for up to 2 computers, or, 2 different things of utilizing the license twice, okay? So that's another important thing. You're not bound by your physical iLok. I put mine in my iLok cloud, bam, whatever computer I go to. As long as I'm logged into my iLok, I'm good to go, all right? So keep that in mind. Okay, as I stated before that, I started talking about it's just a matter of time before the rest of their plugins are included in the plan, all right? So I think, I think they're going to slowly start to add them as they get them coded. They started with some of their most popular ones. And of course, they already had the API channel strip in a native world because it's been working with Luna for a while now. So I think they've got to slowly but surely do that. The next challenge you're going to run into, and I will be doing some fairly extensive videos and testing on this, is what you get for $19.99 a month. How does it compare to its typical competitors? Okay. And so the competitors of this one primarily are Slate Digital, okay, McDSP, which is not really a competitor, and then as well as Brainworks Plugin Alliance, which is a huge competitor. Softube, to my knowledge, is not doing subscription yet. But I think that's just a matter of time before they go down that. They did do it at one point, got away from it, not sure why. I think they'll get back to it eventually. But anyway, that's up to them, okay? There's pros and cons to subscriptions at the end of the day. But how does it sound value-wise? Now, I'm not asking you the question, is there any value in subscription, okay? That's a different subject. I'm just saying, if you're the type of user and you're already subscribing to other plugin bundles, okay, what can you get from them at $20 a month or less compared to what you get with Universal Audio? Now, I will be comparing plugins from all the major plugin manufacturers against these plugins put in that package. My gut instincts tell me that a lot of people are going to jump on the bandwagon initially because they're curious, okay? Because before you had to be invested in Universal Audio's DSP, whether it's a satellite or built into the Apollos or Twins or whatever. You had to have that to be able to run their plugins. So if you were curious, you just couldn't go test them out, okay? At least not for the last 15 years or so, believe it or not. You could actually run Universal Audio's plugins back in Pro Tools TDM back in the day, but that's a long time ago. All right. So I think a lot of people are going to be curious and they're going to go check to see if the hype out. Some people are going to want to go in there just to prove that all of you UAD fans, you are not justified in your perceptions. And then some are going to be in there and say, I want a taste of that goodness. If it's as good as everybody says, I want a little taste. Okay. So you're going to see a lot of that. All right. So then the dust will settle, all right? And some people will start to back out because my gut tells me at its current pricing structure with the plugins you currently get, a lot of people are going to be turned off of that eventually, only from a volume perspective. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that. I will always take quality over quantity any day of the week. Okay. But the bottom line is these other plugin manufacturers. Hey, I hate to break it to you, Universal Audio fans, but they're not the only ones who make plugins. Okay. And they've been living off a long storied history of which they did deserve all that praise, certainly at one point, and still do to a degree today. I guess the time will tell. See, because this was just, they were not going to be able to sustain the DSP aspect for much longer. They just weren't. I've got a lot of videos on my channel talking about the lack of need for DSP. You know, some exceptions to that might be if you're heavy, a virtual instrument user, but you also incorporate a lot of audio analog tracking into your workflow, that's where DSP is going to come into play and help you out. But if you're just primarily doing some virtual instruments and a lot of audio, your money is much wiser invested in a better computer than it is going into anything with DSP. I've been operating without DSP for a very long time, and I have a long storied history of being heavily reliant upon DSP with all of my decades of Pro Tools HD and HDX experience. Okay. So I don't use it. Well, I currently have a DSP in my Carbon today, although I never really use it. I've actually been using my Carbon more with Studio One and Logic lately than I have in Pro Tools, so that DSP is not even available there. All right. So anyway, there's going to be a lot of discussion about this, about how it goes forward and where Universal Audio moves forward. What they were currently doing was not going to be sustainable. They were smart enough to realize that. Obviously, my instincts on this particular one, I happened to get right on this one. I think I called it exactly like it came out because there was really no other way. You know, there was just no other way. And there's no way of doing this without upsetting some people. There's just no way of doing it. Whether or not you folks that are upset have justification for being upset, I don't think you do. I don't think you do at all. But you're going to have to come to terms with that on your own. I think this is exciting stuff. So all that said, okay, if you're not sure yet, let's go over to the computer and take a look at the plugins that you get with this. So here we are at the computer. I've got Pro Tools open, and here we're going to start out with their 1176 compressor. In the bundle, they include 3 versions of their 1176. You've got the blue stripe, you've got the traditional, as well as another, I think it's revision E, if I remember correctly, but you can look that up and see. But you have 3 options for 1176 compressor, which is probably the most popular compressor on the planet, okay, as far as the hardware unit. All right, next up, we've got the API 2500 compressor, typically used as a bus compressor. I use it on my drum bus as well as my master bus. I also use it as a parallel bus compressor. At least I have it in other plugins, not with the Universal Audio, but the hardware is absolutely phenomenal. Next up on here, you've got the Galaxy Tape Echo, which is a variant of the old Boss / Roland Tape Echo from back in the 70s. And then next, you've got probably the next second most well-known and most used compressor on the planet, and then that is the Tektronix slash Universal Audio LA2A, which is great on vocals, great on bass, like it on acoustic guitar. Go back and forth between that and the 1176 on acoustic guitar for me personally, but that's all personal choice. Next up, we've got the Lexicon 224 digital reverb. I'm sorry, another emulation of a very, very, very popular reverb from back in the day, followed up by Neve 1073 channel strip. I'm interested in trying this with my Slate VM1, see how that compares to Slate's versions of theirs, as well as my Neve clones that I have here in 500 series, as well as 19-inch racks. Next, we're going to follow that up with a plate reverb. Plate reverbs are very, very, very handy. I love them, obviously, on vocals. Next to follow up, we've got a tape emulation of a Studer, what is this, a 24-track tape machine to give yourself some character from back in the day. Next, we're going to follow that up with a mini Moog virtual instrument. I think the name kind of speaks for itself there. And then we've got what they call their Opal, which is their digital synthesizer, followed up by, how do you say that? Ravel. I'm not sure how that's pronounced, but obviously the grand piano, and then followed up lastly with the equivalent of a B3 organ. All right, so those are the plugins that are included with the subscription. You have to decide whether or not they're worth $20 a month to you or not. I'll be doing some fairly extensive testing on these plugins and looking forward to see how they compare against hardware, as well as competitors' versions of the plugin. So I look forward to doing that over the next week or so. So now let's get back to the main video, okay? All right. Okay, so now we've looked at the plugins. I'll be honest with you. Here's my impression. I think this absolutely was a move in the right direction. I think it's an absolute great move for existing UAD users. You can't expect things to stay stagnant in time forever because you're comfortable with it. If businesses work that way, you wouldn't even be using the technology you're using right now. So put that in perspective, okay? And some of you seem to want your money back because now you've bought some gear that you perceive somehow as not being as valuable. I don't understand that school of thought either. That makes no sense. You're going to continue to be able to use it. You went into this believing that DSP, okay, was highly needed, okay? And maybe in your situation, maybe you've got an underpowered computer, and maybe it is. I think one of the things this is going to reveal for a lot of people, and it's going to be an eye-opener, and they're going to realize just how much they never needed that DSP, okay? Especially if you bought into UAD within the last 5 to 7 years, you didn't need that DSP. You just thought you needed it, okay? Now, that doesn't apply to everybody. There's always going to be some exceptions to the rule. But if I can track 70, 80 tracks and do heavy sessions on a 2009 Mac Pro, that's what I had back then, 2009 Mac Pro, and never ever worry about latency, and I'm doing it all in the native world, I hate to break it to you kids out there, but you've not needed it. I've been tracking through plugins the whole time. I've never changed my workflow. I work the same way that you guys do within UAD, but I don't have to use that console in front of my DAW. I can actually record straight to my DAW, and most people, quite frankly, have been doing that for a long time. I think when somebody gets into that ecosystem, they get convinced that it's absolutely needed because in their mind it was needed when they bought it. Some people got into UAD's plugins and bought the hardware out of necessity to be able to access those plugins. Now, for some of you, I can understand how that might frustrate you, but keep in mind, only a small percentage as of today of their plugins are even included in the subscription model. I think we're a solid year away from the rest of that changing, okay? Now, that said, has the value of your satellite unit and your PCIe card DSP, has it gone down in value? It has. And you know what? There are other pieces of gear in your studio right now that will do the same thing. It's a fact of life when you get into recording anything with computers, okay? They're always going to come out with new interfaces. They're always going to come out with new anything digital when it comes to that. The only place you stand a good chance of actually retaining your value or not losing a ton of value is on quality outboard gear, okay? That tends to retain its value, but everything else doesn't. Plugins don't retain their value. DAWs don't retain their value. Computers don't retain their value. Interfaces don't retain their value. So you were in this situation before you found yourself here today. Bottom line is, if you were using those tools to create music and you were satisfied with them yesterday, there's absolutely no reason or no justification today to not continue to be just as satisfied. I think so there are some people acting like spoiled children. I'll be honest with you with it. And I just don't understand that. So, yeah, I'm going to call you out on it if you happen to be thinking like that. And hopefully, some of you can actually think rationally and see that. I don't know. I have to tell you, I saw some of the comments in the UAD forum over on Facebook, and it was like, oh my goodness, I've never seen such vitriol before. Especially one that I don't even understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. For those of you who seem to think because I've been critical of Universal Audio in the past that I'm not a fan, well, that's a lie. I subscribe to their plugins today, and I'm hoping that they're going to bring me the value that they're priced at. I don't suspect I'll stay with them very long at $20, but if they include more plugins, I'll actually see that as a value. That's my gut instinct. I may be completely wrong about that once I get into it, and I look forward to it. And you know what? Bottom line is all of you are going to find out, because I'm going to do some analysis and you can come to your own conclusions and I'll come to mine, and we'll see where we're at with this. I think this is an exciting time. Anytime we see the doors open and given tools with more access to more people, I can't possibly see how that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. And for those of you who feel like you've had this pot of gold with you your whole career as far as you've been into UAD, well, what's wrong with sharing some of that right now and let a few other people get a taste of that shiny gold that you've been holding, okay? I don't know if that was a good example or not, but I think you know what I meant. Anyway, so if you could do me a favor, I would appreciate it. If you like the content of this video, I encourage you to go out and watch other videos. They're not all like this. My goal is to help people out as much as I can. Not everybody agrees with me. Because why? Because I'm not always right. Sometimes it's just an opinion, and you know what they say about opinions. So, but in the meantime, if you do me a favor, go in there and, hit that like button and then that subscribe button and that notification bell. It helps me out so you know when I got a new video out. And it helps me continue to make more videos like this one. Okay. So until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day making great music, regardless of whatever tool you have. Use that tool to the best of your ability to create something straight from your heart. Okay. Hopefully it can make a difference in someone else's life. Until next time, have a great day.